you know, our president so deeply believes that every avoidable eviction of an American family hurt by this pandemic is an avoidable heartbreak and harm to a family's economic security and dignity. And he has worked and instructed us from day one to do everything within our power to prevent unnecessary evictions for those who have been hurt through this pandemic. What I wanted to do today is just give you a little background on the statement that is coming out today that deals with both evictions, our executive actions, and the emergency rental assistance plan for state and local governments. On evictions, the president has long fought for an eviction moratorium. He actually proposed extending eviction moratorium to September 30th when he came into office, and I believe that was not possible due to reconciliation rules, but that was his initial policy position he put forward. He has also supported the CDC extending their eviction moratorium first from January 20th to May 31st, then from May 31st until June 30th. And then even when there was legal questions and legal risk, he supported them extending it through July 31st. Unfortunately, Supreme Court declared on June 29th that the CDC could not grant such an extension without clear and specific congressional authorization. But given the rising urgency of the spread of the Delta variant, the president has asked all of us, including the CDC, to do everything in our power to look for every potential legal authority we can have to prevent evictions. To date, the CDC director and her team have been unable to find legal authority even for a more targeted eviction moratorium that would focus just on counties with higher rates of COVID spread. But again, the president's focus is for us to do everything within our power, or I should say everything within anyone's power to help prevent unnecessary, unavoidable, and painful evictions. One of the things that he is requesting today is that state and local governments extend or pass eviction moratoriums to cover the next 2 months. Right now, 1 out of 3 renters who are behind in the rent are actually protected beyond the federal eviction moratorium by extended state and local evictions moratoriums. The president is asking that all governors and mayors follow suit and extend moratoriums for for 2 months. 2, this president is asking that his departments that provide mortgage-backed lending extend whatever eviction moratoriums they have the power to extend. So that covers USDA and VA and HUD. Third, we have already announced that those with federally backed mortgages may not evict without 30 days of notice. But today the president is going further in a statement Friday and by the cabinet members and in his instruction today, he is asking that USDA, VA, and HUD and the Treasury Department as well make clear that those who benefit from government-backed mortgages or even tax relief related to housing should not seek evictions without first seeking the emergency rental assistance funding that allows that makes landlords completely whole, that can pay up to 18 months of forward and back rent and utilities, that we want anybody who's got a government-backed mortgage to seek that type of relief. Finally, as the congressional leadership discussed and asked, we are going to do an all-agency review to make sure that we understand any potential reason why state and local governments are not getting funds out, and making sure that we are using all authorities, whatever federal authority that we have, to prevent evictions. On the state and local relief, as you know, there was $25 billion in initial emergency rental assistance. Again, this is the rental assistance that can make landlords completely whole and also keep families safely housed. It is a win-win solution. Unfortunately, on January 19th, the Trump administration left by putting in place a completely unworkable, high documentation guidelines that would have never worked. So immediately, Treasury cleared up those guidelines and got the remaining funds out. After that, the president, as part of the American Rescue Plan, added another $21.5 billion of emergency rental assistance. Now, we have stressed, and the president has continued to stress, that state and local governments must do more, all of them, to accelerate the funding to these renters and landlords, particularly as we face the end of the eviction moratorium and the rise of the Delta variant. Now, we recognize this is not an easy task. We as a country have never had a national infrastructure or national policy for preventing avoidable evictions. Matthew Desmond, many of you know, the author of Evictions, has estimated that 3.6 million evictions are filed every year in non-pandemic years, and often for amounts as little as $500 or $600 of back rent. So we realize that state and local governments are often being asked to set up some programs from scratch. But we have listened to their concerns. We have listened to the concerns of others in the housing community, and we have responded. On May 7th and June 24th, we put forward significant guidance that made it clear that you can have simplified applications. You do not have to have documentation for income or non-traditional income or to show your hardship. We put out things that allowed you to pay landlords in bulk payments or utilities for many tenants, and that you could use the funds not only to keep people in their homes, but to make sure that you could help people find new housing or help those homeless or at risk of being homeless. With these reforms, we have seen many states and localities start to succeed, from Louisville to Houston at Harris County, to Virginia, to the state of Virginia. Many places are succeeding. We did see in June the numbers double to $1.5 billion in assistance that went out the door to renters and landlords, helping 290,000 tenants. We expect these numbers to grow, but it will not be enough to meet the need unless every state and locality immediately accelerates funds to tenants. The president is clear. If some states and localities can get this out efficiently and effectively, there's no reason every state and locality can't. There is simply no excuse, no place to hide for any state or locality that is failing to accelerate their emergency rental assistance fund. So the president is asking today that at the state and local court level, that they heed the call of the Department of Justice to pause evictions, to ensure that evictions are a last resort, not a first resort. For those of you who remember, this is what the Department of Justice, Vanita Gupta, put out a major statement on, and what we did the White House summit with 46 cities to work and encourage them to use these kind of diversionary proposals to avoid evictions. At the request of the congressional leadership, as I mentioned, we are investigating all reasons for any delay of state and local funds and whether we have the power to compel more expeditious use. He also is calling on utilities and landlords to use the funds that Congress has made available to them, the emergency eviction funds, but also other funds in water and heating that they can use before they move to evict. And finally, he's asking the Treasury Department to make clear, you can not only use your emergency rental assistance funds, the $46 billion, but any of the funds in the $300 billion state local fund to help with dealing with housing needs of anyone hurt with the pandemic. And that includes working with courts and legal aid and counselors, or to help give more incentives to landlords to cooperate with them who are willing to house those who are homeless, those who are have been evicted, or to provide more longer-term stable housing to the most hard-pressed renters. The message is very clear. This president wants to do everything within his power. We are still investigating what that legal authority is, whether there is any options that we can have on eviction moratoriums beyond what we've seen. But you can be sure of one thing: whatever is in the power of this president to do to prevent evictions, he is committed to doing.
Nancy? Thank you so much, Gene. So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is still calling today for the administration to extend the eviction moratorium. She seems to believe that the administration can do it. So what is the disconnect here? Why does she believe you have the power to extend the moratorium, but the administration is arguing you don't?
Well, I would say that on this particular issue, the president's not only kicked the tires, he has double, triple, quadruple checked. He has asked the CDC to look at whether you could even do targeted eviction moratorium that just went to the counties that have higher rates, and they as well have been unable to find the legal authority for even new targeted eviction moratoriums. I mean, we share so much the goals of Speaker Pelosi and others on the Hill. You know, we mean this. This is a president who really understands the heartbreak of eviction. He is the reason why he is pressing and pressing, even when legal authority looks slim, is because he wants to make sure we have explored every potential authority. So this is a president who is double, triple, and quadrupling this, and is not just, and is responding by then saying, if we don't have legal authority in some place, then we need to do a wide administration and state and local look at where we do have the authority to act and prevent evictions.
She and other House Democratic leaders said they got very little notice from the administration, that it felt that it was unable to extend the eviction moratorium. And Dick Durbin, senator from Illinois, said a couple of hours ago, it looks like somebody dropped the ball. Did it take too long for the administration to determine that you weren't going to be able to unilaterally extend the eviction moratorium?
You know, I think the wording in the Supreme Court opinion was fairly, clear, that they said the CDC could not grant such extension without, quote, clear and specific congressional authorization. I think really what has happened, what we are all dealing with, is that the rise of the Delta variant is particularly harmful for those who are most likely to face evictions. And as that reality became more clear going into the end of last week, I think all of us started asking, what more could we do? And we were very focused and have been extremely focused on the state and local relief. Many of you might have saw that on the 28th, we did a massive wide effort to get news out to tenants and landlords where they could go. I compliment those like PayPal and Venmo who put it on the front of their app, and tens of millions of people saw it. But I think that when the Delta variant started to rise, and that it hits this particular, that it's likely hit harder the people most likely to be low income, unvaccinated, that there was just an effort to go back and again double, triple, quadruple check. And I think we were in that, and I think other people on the Hill have also been in. So this was this was us responding to a new reality and doing so with this aggressive set of actions that President Biden has asked, both at the state and local level, of his executive team, of even landlords and those who run utilities. But I think on the eviction moratorium issue, we have run into so far what seems to be very difficult obstacle from the Supreme Court ruling. And again, the president went out of his way to push to the CDC today to look even at 30 days, even targeted to high counties with higher infections. And the CDC independently came back and said that they could not at this time find the legal authority. I don't think this means this president's going to give up. I think he's going to keep looking and pushing and kicking the tires and fifth, sixth looks, but we're going to do everything we can.
But is there any contention or indication?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sperling. But the Delta variant has been around for weeks and has been the dominant strain in the United States for several weeks as well. So why did the president wait until Sunday to ask the CDC for a targeted moratorium focused on those areas with high case rates?
I think what you're seeing is a president who's just trying to do everything that he can in his power. And part of that is also going back to places where he has heard initially that we do not have legal authority. And he's saying this is so important. I want to double and triple check. I want to ask the CDC independently if they share that same reading of the Supreme Court's view. And I think he's going to continue to look. So I think this just reflects a continuation of a president who is looking at every possible authority we can do. And to be honest, when he is told there is not authority, his response is, because he cares so deeply, is to double, triple, quadruple check. And that's exactly what him going to the CDC represented.
I just think the question from even progressive Democrats is that you got this ruling from the Supreme Court at the end of June, so why did it take so long to call on Congress to act if it is so important to him? Why did it take so long to go to the CDC for this 30-day moratorium that he was seeking?
Well, again, I think that the fact that the Supreme Court had ruled that way, I mean, remember, knowing we face some legal risk, supported extending the moratorium to July 31st. The Supreme Court chose not to strike that down, but the ruling said very, very clearly that was because it was rolling off on July 31st and that extensions would require congressional authorization. That is clear. Those wordings are nothing special for us. They're something anybody here, can read. I think what you saw was that as the Delta variant was worse, that there was just, the passion to not only look for everything we knew we had the power to do, but a lot of what he's doing is asking us to check, double check, triple, quadruple check. And that's also in terms of what he's asking those of us in the White House to do with the agencies. Where agencies have given more narrow opinions on their authorities and powers, he's asking us to go back and push. On, again, the state and local moratorium, this is not insignificant. 1 in 3 people are in states where they have some additional length of protection due to state and local moratoriums. The Supreme Court does not affect that. So he is asking to extend that as well. So again, I think, what you're seeing here is a consistent behavior. And I think the truth is many people came to the same realization, which was that even though the eviction moratorium was supposed to end on the 31st, even though the CDC had said it was their last extension, even though the Supreme Court had seemed to clearly state that beyond that would require authorization, there was still a desire, a passion by this president to go back and say, are we sure? Are we sure? And he is still asking that question, and that's what he was pressing with the CDC. So it's not that this is the first he's doing on this. This is part of a continuation of him looking down every corner, kicking every tire, doing everything we can for whatever authority we have or policies we can do to protect people, protect against unnecessary evictions, particularly of those who've been hurt by the pandemic.
Is there any indication, or is it the contention of this administration, that the undistributed funds that the state and local governments haven't distributed haven't been done so for political reasons? And if so, what's your reaction to that?
I'm sorry, that they haven't been
That
distributed.
they haven't been distributed. You are investigating the non-distribution of some of those funds.
I think much of it, I mean, again, I think that our country did not have a national infrastructure for doing this. I mean, 1.5 billion went out in June. That is not nearly enough. That is certainly more than has ever happened in a month in our country. So Congress asked us to set that up, for that to be imposed at a state, local level. So it requires every state and local government, many of them, to set up processes. So I'm not, again, I understand the challenges they were facing. But right now, there's no excuse for somebody having a complicated application process. There's no excuse for somebody to have excessive documentation. Your government has told you that you can create very simple application processes, and you are able to see that your peers in other states and cities are successfully implementing this. And so this is the time where we want to especially say there's no excuses. If it works in some places, there's no reason it can't work in every place. If you ask me, I think there's a lot of excessive cautiousness and conservatism. And you know, at some point you have to push people that we are giving you the flexibility to get these funds out. We are not telling you, you can rely on self-attestation for hardship, for income. You can rely on bulk payments. You can rely on factual predicates like how low income the housing area or neighborhood is. At this point, some places may still feel like they have to be overly careful and cautious, and we are saying, no, you don't. You need to get these funds out. But I will say the following, too. The American Rescue Plan, in addition to this funds, gave people $350 billion in state and local funds. Those funds are also available. So when people say, well, we need more counselors, or we could do more mediation if we could hire mediators or legal services, or we could help support the court systems, helping to tell people to first seek emergency rental assistance. They fully have that ability. They, in fact, have two pots of money. They can go from the emergency rental assistance, or they can go from the American Rescue Plan.
So what can you do about that?
I'm not going to tell you that Congress gave us a lot of sticks and punitive measures and carrots, but we're doing everything we can, and we have. If you look at the May 7th guidance that we did, it was very significant, and it was widely praised by advocates around the country. It sped up the time that you had to give funds to a tenant directly if a landlord didn't participate. It made clear you could do bulk payments. It made clear you could rely on self-attestation. And then when we heard that there were issues like they weren't sure they could help people who are homeless, we came back on June 24th and made clear that you could for a future debt obligation. So again, I understand that hard is hard, and setting up a national infrastructure on emergency rental assistance, immediately is a challenge. But I think we are now at the point where we feel people have had time. We have listened to their concerns. We have given them enormous flexibility. They are seeing their peers. They're seeing other states and cities succeeding, and there's no excuse for them not doing so. I will say that on September 30th, the one stick you have is that the Treasury Department is allowed to reallocate among places that have not used 65% of the first $25 billion. So that is something the Deputy Secretary of Treasury has made clear. And we have reached out to so many cities, so many governors, so many meetings with the National League of City, National Conference of Mayors, and many of them are working very well with us. Many of them are doing, but we are pressing harder now, as we should, with the end of the eviction moratorium.
Okay, we're just gonna have a tour. Justin, why don't you go?
Thanks. Gene, are you saying that Congress dropped the ball here, essentially? I mean, you said that they've written the plan, and you guys don't have a lot of tools to fix it. So is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. I think what they did was historic. I think that we as a country have never had a policy to prevent avoidable evictions. Again, Matt Desmond says in a normal year, you have over 300,000 a month, and actually August is one of the worst. That's the average between 2000 and 2016. And the eviction lab shows that many of those people were evicted for just $500-600 of back rent. So I think the idea that Congress pushed for us to create a national infrastructure that we could get this out and to put the amount of money in there that could help make landlords whole. Remember, the thing about the emergency rental assistance that's so important is that it helps struggling landlords and struggling tenants. It can pay up to 18-month forward or backwards of back rent or back utilities. So it is a way to make a landlord who is struggling whole while also keeping that tenant and their family safe and secure. I'm just expressing the reality of the fact that we do whatever we can with the tools we have. And we have found that the guidance has worked. Listening to people, making clear you could use self-attestation, making clear you could have low documentation. It has worked in many places. Again, I mentioned Louisville, Harris County, Virginia. That's just a small sample of the places it's working. So we think what Congress did was historic, and we think it has the potential to help enormously. And look, people shouldn't think that this is hopeless. You know, yes, people do reports of 6 million being behind, but when you look at the Pulse survey and the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, they're talking about, you know, a little less than 2 million really being a threat. We helped nearly 300,000. If we can get those numbers up, imagine if you were at 500,000. That meant you could be helping 1.5 million over a few month period. So if states and local governments rise to this great resources that this Congress wisely gave to them, there is every reason to believe that they could have a substantial effect in mitigating these evictions. And that's why we're pressing so hard, and that's why we're going to look for every bit of authority or persuasion or guidance that we can make. I'm just saying that the reality is there's not like a punitive stick. That doesn't mean that there was anything wrong with what I think is really a historic element of the American Rescue Plan that I think could not only be helpful now, but going forward in preventing unnecessary evictions that we know have often heartbreaking and longer-term impacts on families and their economic and health stability.
I'm just gonna go to Yamiche, we gotta wrap it up after that, but so we go to the farther back. Go ahead.
Thanks so much for taking my question, and thanks
Sure.
for adding one more. I guess my question is, it's two-part. One, why not force the Supreme Court to make this decision? And two, is that decision not to actually go to the Supreme Court and force them to strike it down? Does it have anything to do with fears that the Supreme Court might strike down the administration's broad use of public health laws for other policies?
You know, I do not necessarily. I believe that people have been examining whether there is legal authority to go forward, period, whether there's legally available option. For me personally, yeah, you always have to worry about whether you do something that could create harm. That's a factor to think about. Is it an overwhelming factor? I can't tell you. But, you know, I think when you're governing, you have to look at all these issues and see. I think the president is still kicking every corner because I think if there's any chance that you could get this extension, he wants to know every available authority. But it is a consideration that I think, you know, may have affected some of us, but I can't say that I think within our legal counsel and the CDC, I think they have spoken mostly about simply whether there is that legal authority to go forward. But again, I want to make clear, you've seen this president is continuing to double, triple, quadruple check on those issues. and to ask all of us to look in every corner and kick every tire and double, triple, quadruple check if there's any possible way that we can forward.
What might be the things that you're worried about the Supreme Court striking down? What unnecessary, what maybe unintended
You're trying to
consequences
get
might
me in.
come from
You're
that?
trying to get me in trouble with Dana Remus. Are you like trying to make me persona non gratis with our general White House counsel? I'll pass.
Is it 2 million people though? Is that the number that this White House believes could end up losing their homes as a result of this?
I am saying that those who are those are people. Those are the estimates for 1.4 to 1.9 are people who fear that they could be at a deeper level. A significant percentage of them are in states where there's eviction. The moratorium is increased. We have lots of indications that the kind of diversionary policies that we are doing is helping. And also, remember, we're at almost 300,000. If we're up to 400,000 or 500,000, then you could be talking about helping well over 1 million people in a few month period.
How many people?
But what I was trying to say is that we are pushing hard because we do believe that if state and local governments were to accelerate, if all of them were to do as well as the best performers are, what I'm trying to say is that it could make a sizable impact on mitigation because those type of numbers over a few month period, you could have a substantial impact. That said, not everyone.
But what's the number that America should brace for? How many people does this White House believe could lose their home because of this?
I do not have an estimate. What I was trying to discourage against was the use of just the largest. I mean, sometimes people are just using what is the percentage of 45 billion or what is the percentage of everybody who says they didn't back pay, and it can make it seem like it can understate the degree of progress. If you feel like being able to help several 100,000 a month over a few months, it could matter a lot. And if we could get all the states and local governments, I'm saying that you could make a sizable impact.
Millions.
What's
Do you
that?
foresee millions of people losing their homes?
No.
Okay, Gene, thank you very much. He's available, he works here, so he
No.
has to help us out
I
more.
don't. I just was identifying what a more targeted estimates are of the people who say in surveys that they feel at some point, not just, at some point, and that's why I'm saying that's why the assistance is so important, because you could hit a sizable impact of people who could be at risk each month if everybody was operating. Could be a meaningful number, though, every eviction is a heartbreaking, so I don't want to play down those who could still face it, but just to stress that the state and local governments accelerating. We're at 290,000. If it keeps getting larger and larger every month and sustains for several months, that it could have a sizable impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.